Module number 4, Administering networking, which would be core part of this training. And why this would be core part of this training? Just because when it comes to isolation, customization into cloud, we should have understanding on virtual network so that we would be able to understand. So when it comes to virtual network, so it means we should have knowledge of IP addressing, subnetting, CIDRs. When it comes to IP addressing, we have two types of IP addresses, correct? IPv4 and v6. In our syllabus, we do not have fundamental, but I'm trying to describe you IP addressing and all the fundamentals related to networking so that we can understand this module easily. When it comes to IPv4, any idea what would be length of IPv4? Any idea? Length of IPv4?
Means it's respective to the available IP addresses or the masking talking about?
I'm talking about IPv4 length. If we're talking about
12?
it's 32.
Oh, 32.
32,
Yeah.
correct? And when it comes to IPv6,
So
128.
Yeah.
128, correct? So what happens when it comes to networking? In networking, what it does mean by networking? Networking means you have clients, nodes, computers which will be interconnected, correct? And how you will identify your computers? So we have two types of addresses on our computer, physical address and logical address. What is physical address? Any idea? Physical address on your computer, laptop, desktop, node, system?
Is a MAC address?
Correct, MAC address. And MAC address length is 48-bit. Correct. So physical address is known as MAC address, which we cannot change. And on every system, you will get a unique MAC address. Similarly, when it comes to network, in network, we have logical address, which is known as IP address, which will be unique for each system within the network, but we can change. We can change as per our requirement, we can change these addresses. So that is known as logical address. So inside a network, you will identify your system using IP address. Correct. When it comes to IP address, we have two types of IP addresses nowadays, IPv4, v6. So if I'm talking about IPv4 structure, so IPv4 is divided into 4 octets, which are separated by a dot, or you can say by decimal. Each octet contains 8 bits, equals to 32 bits. Sorry. Each octet contains 8 bits. We have 4 octets, 4 blocks. Now, IPv4 address is divided into classes. Class A, B, C, D, and E. 5 classes. Class A, which have a range which would be between 0 to 127. 0 and 127 both are reserved. So it means usable range is 1 to 126, which you can use into class A. Class B, which have a range which is 128 to 191. Then class C, 192 to 223. Class D, 224 to 239. Class E, 240 to 255. We can use class A, B, and C only. Class D, that is reserved for multicasting. Class E, again, that is reserved for R&D, research and developments. Now, when it comes to class A, B, and C structure, so let's understand class A. Class A structure, first portion represents network, second represents host, third represents host, fourth represents host. Class B, first portion network, second network, third host, fourth host. C, first network, second network, third network, fourth host. What it does mean by this structure? Structure means, if you remember, class A is having a valid range 1 to 126. B, 128 to 191. C, 192 to 223. So if I'll give you one example here, let's assume 100 dot 100 dot 100 dot 100. So this is the IP address, right? Then 172.16.16.16, that is also IP address. 192.168.1.10, that is also IP address. So we have to now identify classes of these IP addresses. IP address belongs to which class, and after then which network. How we will do that? So it's simple. First you need to check first portion of your IP address and value of that first portion. So 100. 100 lies between 1 to 126. It means this address belongs to class A. Correct? If this address belongs to class A, then we have a structure for class A, which is network, host, host, host. And if you need to identify network ID of this IP address, the network ID will be 100, the network portion, dot 0, 0, 0. All host portions bit will be 0. And you will consider network portion bit as it is, value as it is. That is known as network ID. It means this IP address belongs to this network. Similarly, second address. Second address first portion value is 172, which lies between 128 to 191. It means address belongs to class B. If address belongs to class B, then structure is network, network, host, host. Correct? It means 172.16.0.0. Host portion bit you need to place to 0, set to 0, and you will get your network ID. When it comes to third address belongs to class C. So network, 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 host, where your network ID will become 192.168.1.0. This would be your network ID. Hope this part is clear to everyone. How you will identify your network portion into given IP address. Again, networking itself, it's a 5-day course. So I'm trying to give you some overview so that you all can understand VNet, correct? And we can easily define virtual network into our Azure infrastructure. Now, when it comes to, I hope you all know what is network and host. This N and H part, network and host. Any idea what is network, what is host?
Host is our device where we can say that's end user device or end user machine system from where the network will request routing. Means it's request.
Correct. So let me give you a simple example so that other can also understand what is host and what is network. So when it comes to organization, when it comes to connectivity part, all devices, all hosts are connected to a common network ID. As you can see this example, where this would be a network ID. Inside this network ID, there would be 1,67,77,214 computers you can connect, nodes. And all nodes would be able to communicate with each other just because we are using class A address. In class A, within one network, you would be able to connect 1,67 lakh plus computers which you can connect, correct? Within one network in class A. And all computers network ID will be same this 100.0.0.0. So how we will know that? How we will understand this concept? So assume in Cognitia, there are two trainings which are going on parallelly, Azure and AWS, correct? So in Azure training, there are few participants who joined this training using some meeting links. Parallelly, there is another training, AWS, and where there would be few participants who joined this training. So for Azure training, we have a meeting ID, Teams meeting ID, which will be unique. And for AWS, we have another meeting ID, which will be unique. So participants who are going to join Azure training, they will use same meeting ID to join this training. That means the meeting ID which you are using, same meeting ID I am using. Correct? And we all are using same meeting ID, common meeting ID to join this training. So this meeting ID you can understand like a network. This would be your network ID. And participants who are joining this meeting using this meeting ID, they will be like a host of this network. So whenever you all will be in the same meeting, we all can communicate. That means you can enable your mic, you can unmute yourself, and you can communicate with each other, correct? We all can communicate with each other just because we all are in the same network. We all are in the same meeting. So we can communicate with each other. So if your devices would be in the same network, they all would be able to communicate with each other. Now, we cannot communicate to AWS participants directly. There is no communication directly. Just because AWS means we're talking about different network, second network. Correct? If we have to communicate, then we will use some routing method. We will use routers, mobile phone, so that we can route our traffic using some device. Otherwise, there would be no direct communication. But within the network, we would be able to communicate directly with each other. Correct? That is the concept of network and host. I hope that is also clear to everyone. So if our network will be same, we would be able to communicate with each other. Next concept is CIDR. Now what is CIDR? CIDR means, assume into your blueprint in production, or if you're going to deploy any resource. So first we have to design our network infrastructure. So you will get some blueprint which you need to deploy. So assume you're getting one address 192.168.0.0 then /24 or /26. Any idea what it does mean by /24 or 26?
It's a bit portion of this network segmentation.
So this portion is known as CIDR.
CIDR, yeah.
Correct? And into IPv4, if you remember, we have two portions, network and host. Network portion and host portions. So number of this CIDR value, whatever number you will get here into CIDR, 24, 25, 26, 17, 18, 19. So it will define your network bits. What it does mean? Let me expand my all bits. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. In each octet we have 8 bits. Then dot. Second octet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Dot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Dot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That means total 32 bits. Now, as per this example, 24 bits we are using for network. Whatever value you will get into your CIDR range, it means that much bit you are using for your network portion, which you have to enable now into your bits from left to right. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. So these bits I'm using for network portion. 8 bits are remaining, which would be your host bits. And now you can easily calculate using this CIDR range how many devices you can connect within one network. How? There's a formula. 2 raised to power h minus 2 equals to, where h is number of free host bits. H is number of free host bits. So 2 raised to power 8, just because 8 bits are free as per this CIDR range. Minus 2 equals to 254. So you will get 254 devices. It means you can connect 254 computers in this network using this CIDR range, and 254 computers will communicate with each other within one department. That's how you can calculate your network and your host portion, and you would be able to calculate your devices, number of computers which you can connect. Again, it would be difficult just because it needs lots of practice over the CIDR range, correct? But let me give you one website also where you can put your CIDR range. Like if you will get any address with some CIDR range and you're confused, so simply do one thing. You can use cidr.xyz website. Just check this website. Let me copy and paste link into the chat box. cidr.xyz. So here you need to replace your value. Like I'm going to replace my value, and you will get your output, correct? Like 192.168.0.0, and I'm going to use 26 as my CIDR. So I will get output here, complete configuration, which you can see here. This would be my subnet mask as per this CIDR range. I'm using 26 bits, which you can see here. 26 bits for network and 6 bits remaining bits are for host, correct? So total number of count host will be 64. 2 raised to power 6 minus 2, correct? So 2 raised to power 6 is 64. Minus 2 means I cannot use first address, which would be my network address, and I cannot use my last address, which would be my broadcast address, which we have to remove. That means you cannot use first address and last address of your network, broadcast and network address. So you will get 62 devices within this network using this CIDR range, which you can check here. So usable address 1, last 62. It means total 62 addresses you will get using this CIDR range. Hope that is clear. So here we can check what would be my network size and what would be my first usable bit and last usable IP address within my network. Hope that is clear. So let's move to our part. So when it comes to cloud, in cloud again, when it comes to designing a application, deploying an application, so first we need to design network infrastructure, an isolated environment for our application, where we can isolate our application from other application, other deployments. So we will create a private network, which is known as VNet. And you can say VPC, Virtual Private Cloud, correct? And one more thing, IP address. In IP address, we have two categories, public and private. So public means routable IP addresses. Routable means where you will get internet connectivity, where you can route your traffic over the internet. That is known as public IP addresses, which you have to purchase from ISP, Internet Service Provider. When it comes to private IP addresses, so private IP addresses are free to use, which you can freely use inside your LAN environment, local area network. And local area network in cloud, that is known as VNet. In on-premises, there would be LANs, LAN 1, LAN 2, LAN 3, correct? Same is known as VNet into cloud. LAN is known as VNet into cloud, local area network, or you can say virtual network or virtual private cloud. So now in class A, we have a range which we can use into on-premise LAN or into VNet, Azure VNet. The range is 10.0.0.0 to 10.255.255.255. That is free and no need to purchase. You can use inside your organization LAN or into your Azure VNet. Class B, we have a range 172.16.0.0 to 172.31.255.255. Class C, we have a range 192.168.0.0 to 192.168.255.255. Now all these ranges are free. free to use inside your private network, either into LAN or into cloud. So when it comes to Azure VNets, virtual networks, so we will plan a virtual network in which we will create subnets. Subnet means we will define either our application tier or our department, like production, dev, test, which we want to isolate from other departments. Similarly, when it comes to a application, 2-tier application or 3-tier application, so front end, it should be isolated from back end. Then back end, it should be isolated from front end and from database. So front end, back end, database. In front end, we have 4 resources, that is 4 web application, and which will be exposed to internet on port 80 and port 443. Then what I want, just because all tiers should be isolated, so I will create subnets, separate subnet. So subnet 1, subnet 2, subnet 3. Now I will use firewall to filter my traffic, just because ultimately end users, they will send requests from internet to your front end. Front end will receive this request on port 80 and port 443. Then your front end will pass this request to back end, which will process as per the client request, correct? So now which port and protocol I'm going to entertain, I'm going to open. So what we will do, either we will open port number 443 or port 80. So what I'm saying, whatever request I'm getting from front end on back end, I will only receive that request on port number 80 or port number 443. And after then I will pass this request to database. On which port? Port number 14334 SQL database. If I'm using MySQL, then port number 3306 I will open. So I will open port and I will only entertain these ports requests. Except that these port requests, if I'm getting any other requests, I will discard those requests. That's how securely we will, traffic will be flow from one tier to another tier into Microsoft Azure. And to maintain this flow and to filter this flow, we have to design virtual network and subnets. Correct? Hope that is clear. The idea is clear. Why we are using VNet, why we are using virtual network. To filter our traffic, to isolate our resources from other networks, from other deployments. We are using virtual network. So it's a logical representation of your on network into cloud. You can create a dedicated private cloud network, that means a LAN into cloud. Securely extend your data center with virtual network. It means if we have on-premise data center and where we need to connect our resources to cloud, that is hybrid connectivity, we will set up a VNet first and then we will connect our VNet to our on-premise. So whatever resources I have inside my virtual network, all resources would be able to communicate with on-premise network. Enable hybrid cloud scenario. You can enable hybrid cloud scenario using site-to-site VPN or express route. Now to create virtual network, how you will create virtual network, I'll show you practically. So which we will start on next Saturday. Then I'll show you how we will create VNet and subnets. I'm not going to read slides too. So we will test this practically. And again, I would request all of you to create your free tier account so that you can test lab along with me. Then creating subnets, I'll show you all these practically. IP addressing. So when it comes to IP address, if you remember, we have 2 types of IP address, private, public. Private IP address means which will work within the VNet and on-premise infrastructure. Public means where you will access internet. So you can use public IP addresses on internet-facing services or for public-facing services like load balancer, gateways, correct? Which we will discuss into next session, and we will start this module practically. I will show you complete production related lab into this module, just because we are going to discuss about security groups, firewall, the default firewall, and we are going to discuss about DNS. So DNS is very important topic. Why? Just because now you have Azure infrastructure where you have web application, you have your tenant, directory, you have your SQL database, correct? You have complete application here, and into on-premises, you have resources, you enable hybrid connectivity, you purchase a domain name from GoDaddy, assume, which would be, let's assume xyz.com, which you purchase from GoDaddy or Big Rock or any third party. Now you have to integrate this DNS with Azure so that end users, whenever they will send requests to www.xyz.com, it should be redirected to your web application, which is in Azure cloud, correct? And your web application IP address should resolve using this address, and which you purchase from GoDaddy. Again, if I'm talking like this, we cannot understand this concept, correct? To understand this, we need to perform lab, and which should be production related. So this would be a production related lab where I'm going to show you complete DNS integration, where I'll show you how we will integrate a DNS from GoDaddy to Azure, or we can configure our records on GoDaddy as well. But in that case, you have to manage two portals, one Azure portal, second GoDaddy, and which would be difficult again. When it comes to flexibility, it will be difficult for me to manage two portals, being an administrator. So what we will do, we will integrate GoDaddy with Azure, and I will manage my DNS on Azure rather than managing on GoDaddy, which I will show you next week so that you can understand this Azure DNS concept also. Good evening and good morning, everyone. Welcome back to online session on Azure Administration. I hope I'm audible to all of you and my screen is visible to all of you.
Yeah, hi, good evening, Sanjay.
Hi, Naushad.
So, happy Deepavali. Dashara is
Same
already
to you and
finished.
thank you.
Deepavali is come on the...
Yeah.
Don't worry, I'm also from Delhi. So,
Great. Okay, so let's continue with module number 4, and we are going to start Azure Virtual Networking. So in virtual networking, we already started this module. Let me show you what we are going to cover in this module. We are going to cover Azure Virtual Network, network security groups, configuring Azure DNS, correct? So there are 3 lessons, and just because certification is now updated in October, so I'm using latest Microsoft slides and latest content, correct, which are provided by Microsoft in respect to our certification, global certification. So configuring virtual network, which we already started. When it comes to VNet, so VNet is basically, it's a private space into cloud. When it comes to VNet, VNet means we are talking about VPC, virtual private cloud, correct? So where in respect to, if you will compare with your on-premises data center, like on-premise data center. So in on-premise data center, first of all, you will set up your network infrastructure, where you will set up your LANs, local area network. And in local area network, you will set up your private IP addresses, private IPs, private network range. When it comes to IPv4 address, so IPv4 address is divided into 2 sections, public and private. Public address, which we have to purchase from ISP, Internet Service Provider, and private address, which is free, which you can use, which anyone can use, correct? So we can use that private address either into on-premise LANs or into cloud VNet VPC, correct? So in Azure, in VNet, we are going to use private addresses. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to design a scenario, and we will understand this VNet module using a lab, correct? Where I'm going to show you complete modules, complete lessons in my lab demonstration, correct? So we will create one virtual network. VNet name would be VNet1. You can give any name, totally up to you. VNet name will be VNet1. VNet address, which I'm going to give, that is known as network address also. So which would be 192.168.0.0/16. So 16 would be your CIDR. 16 would be your CIDR range, correct? And total address in IPv4 we have 32. It means we are using 16 address 16 bits for network. The CID meaning we're using 16 bits for network. So remaining bits are 16 now, which you can use for your hosts. That means for your IP addresses, for your computers, nodes, servers. Now what we are going to do, we are going to divide this address into subnet. That means we are going to do a logical segmentation of this network into smaller segments. That is known as subnetting, subnetted address. Like in between your departments. So production, you can use a smaller network section. So dev, test, logistic, HR, sales. So you can isolate your department by dividing your network address into smaller sections, that is known as smaller segment, that is known as segment, subnets. So when it comes to so based on our application tier, we can divide our address into subnets or based on the department as well. So it depends. So ultimately you have to understand how we are going to create subnets. So first subnet which I'm going to create, it would be public. Public subnet. Second subnet which I'm going to create would be private subnet. So public means resources which I will place in public subnet. So those resources will be exposed to internet. They can receive traffic from internet as deemed state public. When it comes to private, private means resources like database, backend, which I can place into my private subnet where there would be no outbound internet access. That is called private subnets. Correct. So first you have to create a VNet. Second, you need to create subnets, and then let me assign addresses to my subnets. So to public, I'm going to assign an address range which would be 192.168.0.0/24. As you can see, my CIDR range, which is not 24. My main network range is now 16. So using 16, you will get 65,000 IP addresses. If you will use 24, you will get only 254 IP addresses. So number of IPs are now reduced just because we divided this address into smaller segments. Correct? We are using 16 CIDR, you will get 65,000 plus addresses, like 65,534 IP addresses you will get if you will use 16. Now, I divided my address into smaller segment where you can see, and now I'm using 24. So using 24, you will get 254 address in a network, in a section. So that is called subnetting. So second address, second subnet, which would be 192.168.1.0/24. Correct. And in my both subnets, I'm going to create virtual machines. So in public subnet, we will create one virtual machine. In private subnet, we will going to deploy second virtual machine, and then we will test our internal communication. Then we will test our communication from internet. We will understand firewall, which is known as NSG, Network Security Group, which is our layer 4 firewall. Correct? So this would be our lab scenario, which we are going to test. We will set up our public server as a web server. Correct? I'll show you how we will set up this as a web server, and then how we will use DNS, public DNS. So this would be completely a production related lab. If you are going to test this lab along with me, confirm in the chat box. So participants who are going to test lab along with me, confirm in the chat box so that I can slow down my pace and you would be able to follow steps. I hope lab scenario is clear to everyone. If you have any query related to lab scenario, you can ask a question. Otherwise, we are going to test this lab.
Sanjay, can you go once again?
Yeah, sure.
So how to create the subnet and all this?
So basically, first we will create a VNet, which you can see. So first step will be, let me divide into steps. So first step would be VNet. Second step will be subnet. Third step will be creating virtual machine. Correct. And fourth step would be testing communication in between our virtual machines. Correct. I hope that is clear now. Rest you will understand completely into our lab session. So now let's move to portal and let's test this lab inside our portal. As I can see, no one is performing lab along with me. So first, what we have to do, there are two ways to create virtual network. First, you can create virtual network first. After then, you can place your resources inside that VNet. Second option, you can create your virtual machine, and along with VM, you can design your virtual network. So first of all, I'm going to show you VNet part. So in next module, module number 6, I'll show you module number 5. I'll show you how we will create VNet using virtual machine as well. How we can set up a virtual network using virtual machine while deploying virtual machine. So to create virtual network, first we have to search VNet. So search VNet, you will get virtual networks. In output, where you have to select virtual networks. As you can see, there's no VNet available. Let me click on create virtual network first. Next option, resource group. So we have to create a resource group. I'm going to create new resource group, which would be M4RG1 module 4 resource group 1, so that whatever deployment I'm going to do for this lab, after testing this module lab, we will delete our resource group. We will ensure whatever resource we are creating for this model, we will deprovision all the resources. Virtual network name. So as per our scenario, VNet1 would be our virtual network name. A region where you're going to create this VNet, I'm going with Central India. You can choose your nearest region. They're totally up to you. Then next part is security part, where you can see we have three options: Azure Bastion host, Azure firewall, Azure DDoS protection. Again, in respect to Azure administration certification, you will not touch any topic related to security. So we have separate certification, like we have AZ500 and AZ700, Azure security and Azure networking, where you will discuss about Azure Bastion, firewall, and DDoS. Let me give you an overview so that you all can understand. Azure Bastion. Now, what is Bastion? Any idea what is jump box? Anyone who heard about jump box into organization? Any idea what is jump box?
Is it that you go to use another box to go into another box?
No. So jump box means in your organization. I hope you, if you configured your data center using some servers, racks, where your servers are not accessible, correct? So in that case, we can use like ILO. You heard about ILO or serial console, correct? Or a remote server where we can access other servers remotely, where we do not have any public access on those servers, correct? So that type of server is known as jump box into our organization. Similarly, when it comes to Azure, now in Azure, just because resources are virtual, so virtual machine which you are creating here, that is virtual, that is deployed into Azure data center. So if this virtual machine is deployed into Azure data center, how you will access and configure this virtual machine as per your requirement? So either you will use RDP for Windows virtual machine, or you will use SSH for Linux virtual machine. But for RDP and SSH, you need a public IP address on your virtual machine, public IP. So there should be public connectivity, correct? Now, due to compliance, there would be a rule where there would be no public IP address associated on your virtual machine. And if you have to access this VM, then you should use some secure way. In that case, we will deploy another virtual machine that is known as Azure Bastion host, which we will use as a jump box. So internally, your all virtual machines will be connected to from different subnets within the VNet. All VMs will be connected to this jump box, correct? And this jump box is connected to browser over a TLS encrypted connection. So you will get a browser access of your virtual machine, which would be a secure way, or we have different ways as well. Like I can configure firewall, in which I can configure NAT rules, network address translation rules. But Bastion host is like a jump box into Azure, so which you can configure and you can access your Linux and Windows virtual machine into your browser over a secure connection, over an encrypted connection. That is called best and host. Yeah. Second option is a firewall. Now, when it comes to virtual machines into Azure, so by default, you will get a firewall associated to your virtual machine NIC card, NIC card. This firewall is known as NSG, Network Security Group, and this would be a layer 4 firewall. If I'm saying layer 4 firewall, what it does mean by layer 4 firewall? Any idea? If I'm saying layer 4 firewall, what it does mean by layer 4 firewall? So
Something
layer
to do
4.
with the ports.
Oh, correct. So layer 4 firewall means we're talking about OSI model layer 4, where your traffic will be filtered based on the TCP and UDP protocol. Correct. So layer 4 firewall will use port, protocol, and IP address to filter your inbound and outbound request. When it comes to organization where we need a dedicated firewall, which works on layer 4, layer 3, and layer 7. So we have Azure Firewall, which is a managed firewall managed by Azure. So simply you have to use this firewall, and this firewall works between layer 3 to layer 7. And you will get Microsoft Threat Intelligence feature as well, where Microsoft is using machine learning algorithm, correct, and which will protect your resources from layer 7 attacks, where WEF is also optionally WEF is available, so where you can use web application firewall to secure your layer 7 content, and which will secure your application from cross-site scripting, SQL injections. It use OWASP top 10 rules. So we can use Azure Firewall, dedicated firewall, or next option is Azure DDoS protection. So by default on our VNet, DDoS is enabled. DDoS protection is by default enabled. But we have two types of DDoS protection, basic and standard. So basic is already enabled on your virtual network. If you want mitigation capabilities and alert rules, in that case, you will enable DDoS protection, where you can create alert rules into your Azure monitoring services, and you need a mitigation capabilities. Then you need to enable standard DDoS, which would be chargeable. All these services are chargeable services, correct? So you can enable all these security features on your VNet, and then you would be able to secure your resource using those resources. So in respect to our certification, we do not have any topic, correct? But what I'm going to do, I'll show you how we will set up Azure Firewall so that you can enhance your knowledge into security domain as well, how you will place Azure Bast and host into your VNet so that you would be able to access your resources securely over a TLS connection, over an encrypted connection, correct? DDoS protection is simple, where you have to only create a DDoS account. Simple, which you need to associate. There is no configuration available. The rest you will use as your monitoring services, which we will understand in module number 11, correct? So right now, I'm not going to enable any feature, but I'll show you how we can enable later also. What if we have any existing VNet where Azure Bastion is not enabled, Azure Firewall is not enabled. So we can enable later as well, correct? So initially, I'm not going to enable any security features here. Let me click on next. Here you can see you will be redirected to IP address tab, where you have to configure your network address and subnet address as per your blueprint, as per your artifacts, correct? So here I'm going to change my network address. You will get some recommended address here, which you can see I'm getting a class A recommended address. But as per my scenario, I have to use 192.168. So again, based on your project, you will get a blueprint, and based on your blueprint, you have to set up your VNet, correct? So I'm going to set up my VNet as per my lab blueprint. So 192.168.0.0 and /16, this would be my CIDR range, correct? Now within this network address, VNet address, I have to create my subnets. So as you can see, there's a default subnet where I'm getting a red cross just because my VNet address, which is starting from 192, but my subnet address is 10, which is default subnet. So what you can do, either you can delete this default subnet, or you can edit this subnet in which you can change this address range, totally up to you. Initially, let me delete this. So now there's no subnet. So we are going to add subnet as per our blueprint. So click on add subnet. First subnet name. So first of all, you can see your VNet range top, then subnet template, where you can see we have multiple templates. If you are going to deploy a Bastion host, then you will select Azure Bastion and your subnet will be configured for Azure Bastion host, Azure firewall, Azure Virtual Network gateway, routers. So you can select template, and based on the template, your subnet will be designed by Microsoft. I'm going with default here, and name will be public. Sorry, first subnet is public. Address range would be 192.168.0.0, same, and CIDR range will be 24, which you can change as per your requirement. I'm going with 24. Rest options I'm leaving as it is here. Let me click on add. So first subnet is added here. Let me click on add subnet. Again, subnet template will be default here, just because we are creating normal subnets. The name will be private. Range will be 192.168.1.0/24. That is okay. Let me click on add. Now let me add third subnet here for advanced lab, which we will test after our module. So here I'm going to add third subnet, and I'm going to use a template which would be Azure firewall. Correct? And subnet range will be 192.168.2.0. Subnet size is grayed out. That is okay. No worries. Let me click on add. And now I'm going to review and create. So let me click on review. It will validate your VNet configuration. Let me click on create, and virtual network deployment will be done. It will take few seconds to deploy your VNet along with 3 subnets: public, private, and firewall subnet. Correct? Now, as you can see, deployment is done. So let me deploy 2 virtual machines. So we are done with first step, second step. Now we are going to follow third step. So let me start virtual machine deployment. So let me search VM or virtual machine from search bar. Select virtual machine. Right now there is no VM available. Let me click on create Azure virtual machine. So here, first I'm going to select my existing resource group M4RG1, which I created for this module. Then virtual machine name. Name should be meaningful. So I'm going to give here name, which would be public-VM1. Public-VM1, what it does mean, it means I'm going to place this virtual machine into public subnet as name state, correct? So it should be meaningful. Region, Central India. Availability option for your virtual machine. So initially it should be no infrastructure redundancy required for right now for this lab. But what is this option? We'll discuss into module number 8. What are the other options are available? We will discuss all options into module number 8. Security type we'll discuss again into module number 8. So should be trusted launch virtual machine. Right now, image I'm going to use here Windows Server 2022 Azure Data Center Edition. Azure Data Center Edition. Then scroll down here. Size, I'm going with default size. Whatever size you will get by default, so go with the default size. Username and password for your virtual machine. So I'm going to give you a student, and password should be 12 character and complex. The minimum password length for Azure virtual machine. Then as you can see, public inbound port enable. It means there would be one firewall will be associated to your virtual machine, and into inbound section RDP will be open as per your image selection. So you selected Windows Server, that's why RDP will be enabled. If you will select Linux, then SSH will be enabled by default. That is okay. So first virtual machine we are going with default configuration. Second virtual machine we will customize, so that we can understand both customize and default, both way. So my aim is to give you knowledge, complete knowledge up to architect level, so that you can manage Azure compute services into Azure cloud, correct? Next option, licensing part, again we will discuss into module number 8. So I'm done with basic tab configuration. Now disk we will discuss into module number 8. Let me go to networking tab. On networking tab, as you can see, there is possibility that there could be multiple VNets into your subscription, into your account. So you should select a VNet from drop down, existing VNet. So if you remember, we created VNet 1. So we are going with VNet 1, which you can see here. Then you will get 3 subnets into VNet 1. Third subnet is grayed out, just because in third subnet I can only deploy firewall device, managed firewall device. That's why that is grayed out. I cannot deploy simple virtual machines, normal virtual machines. Then we have 2 options here, public and private. Now I should select a correct subnet here. So if you remember, my virtual machine name is public VM. It means I should select a public subnet from drop down, which you have to cross check again for all labs so that you can ensure whatever lab you are performing. So you are deploying your resources into correct subnet, correct, which you have to cross check from subnets tab. Next option, public IP address. So by default, you will get a public IP address on your virtual machine. That is okay. Then network security group will be associated to your virtual machine and public inbound port 3389, which will be open. That is also okay. Here you can see delete public IP address and NIC when your virtual machine will be deleted. So what it does mean, if you will delete your VM, so your public IP address and NIC will be available into your resource group. So in that case, there would be charges if you will keep your public IP address and NIC card. So what we want, whenever I'm going to delete my virtual machine, it should be also deleted. My NIC and my public IP address should be deleted along with my virtual machine. Accelerated networking, it means if you want high throughput connection on your NIC. So by default, accelerated networking is enabled on our virtual machine size, which we selected. Correct? It depends on your virtual machine size, and that is by default enabled. If you want, you can disable it. So it will accelerate your networking. You will get high network throughput using this feature. Load balancing, we will discuss into module number 6. So right now, we are not going to select this load balancing option. We are going with the default configuration. So we have to only set up basic tab and networking tab. Then click on review on your virtual machine. Click on review and click on create once your validation will be passed. So as you can see, validation is passed. Let me click on create. Virtual machine deployment will be start, and again it will be completed in few seconds or up to 1 minute it will take. Meanwhile, I'm not going to wait for this deployment. I'm going to create second virtual machine, private. So let me click on create Azure virtual machine again. Resource group, existing, virtual machine name, this time private, VM, reason same, where we have our VNet, availability, no infrastructure redundancy required, image Windows Server 2022 data center, Azure edition, and username and password for your virtual machine. And we are going to customize this virtual machine, firewall and IP address. Public inbound ports, none. I'm going to customize it. We will configure later as per our requirement. So I'm going to select a none for private virtual machine. Now let me go to next networking tab. On networking tab, VNet 1, it should be selected here, which you can see. Subnet should be private as my virtual machine name is private. Then public IP address, I'm going to select a none. What if there would be no public IP address on any virtual machine and you want to add a new public IP address later? How you will do that? So we will understand that also. In firewall, I'm not going to associate any firewall. So how we will create a firewall and how we will associate a firewall to existing VM. We'll understand that also. Correct. Delete NIC and the public IP address when virtual machine will be deleted. That is okay. Now click on review. We're done with configuration of networking tab. And then as you can see, validation is filled. Let me check why and where. So on basic tab, everything is configured. There is no issue on basic tab. So let me click on review once again. So sometimes it happens that you will get error just because of API delay. So no need to worry about that part. If you configured your options correctly, so do one thing. Repeat, review and create. Now click on create, deployment will be start and your virtual machine deployment will be complete in few seconds again. So meanwhile, let me open virtual machines tab and let me show you public virtual machine is there, and let me configure this virtual machine as per our requirement. So first you will go to virtual machines tab. Second, you will click on your virtual machine name which you want to configure, and after then here you can see in center we have a tab connect, or left hand side under connect you will get connect tab. So totally up to you which option you want to select, which option you want to navigate, which tab you want to navigate. So ultimately we have to connect this virtual machine. So click on connect. Here you will get native RDP option which you have to select. So click on select. Right hand side you will get a pop-up where you can see it will first of all check your prerequisites to get a RDP of this virtual machine, which will check your port, RDP port protocol, and public IP address, which you can see which is validated. Once it will be validated, you should download RDP file. So click on download RDP file. It will be downloaded on your local system. That is okay. This would be the first way. If you don't know anything about Windows system or Linux system, if you are a fresher, beginner, correct. If you know how we can get RDP, so simple what you can do, you can copy this public IP address and you will open your remote desktop connection into your Windows system and you will put this IP address, correct, and you would be able to connect your Windows virtual machine which you configured, which you deployed into Azure cloud. Now let me go to my desktop where we have downloaded this RDP. Let me run this RDP. As you can see, it will ask username and password. So let me enter my username and password, and while deploying virtual machine, you will provide some username and password which you need to remember. So initially what you can do, you can write into notepad, correct? So let me click on continue. Then you will get RDP certificate. So accept certificate, and as you can see, your virtual machine will be connected. So once it will be connected, I'll show you how we will set up this virtual machine as a web server. So as you can see, now I have RDP of my virtual machine, Windows virtual machine. Any idea how we can set up this Windows server as a web server? So after connecting your virtual machine, what would be your first step to set up this virtual machine as a web server?
Go through IIS.
So how we will install IIS?
With roles and features.
Correct. So in all Windows server, you will get server manager, which would be a centralized console to manage your server. So server manager will be open automatically inside your Windows server. And once server manager will be open, in server manager you will install roles and features to set up this operating system as a server. It means, so if I will not set up any server role inside this server, so this would be simply a client operating system. If you want to set up this server as a server operating system like DSCP server, AD server, DNS server, backup server, Hyper-V server, file server, print server, remote access server, correct, web application proxy server, so you have to install some role inside this server. So whenever you will install a role inside this server will become that particular role server. So as we have to set up the server as a web server, so what we will do, there is a tab manage which you can see right hand side. Flag is your notification bar into server manager, or in center also you can see add roles and features tab. So that is totally up to you. I'm going to click on manage tab, and then you will get one pop-up here where you can see first option is add roles and features. So we have to click on add roles and features. You will get a new wizard here. Click on next. So first of all, first you need to click 3 times next. So 1, 2, and 3. After then you will get roles tab where you would be able to see server roles which you can select, and you can set up the server as per the role which you have selected. So as per our requirement, we have to select here web server. So web server which you can see, so whenever you will select any role, you will get a pop-up if there would be any dependencies as a feature for that particular role. So as you can see, for web server we have some dependencies as a feature like management tools. So let me click on add features. After then 4 times next and install. So 1, 2, 3, 4, install this role, and this role will be installed. So once role will be installed, we would be able to set up, customize this server. Initially, you will get default page of IIS. So when this role will be installed, you will get default page of IIS. Now, let's come to our PPT and let's understand scenario. So here we have VNet 1 in which we have public subnet. We have private subnet. In public subnet, we have one virtual machine which we configured as a web server, where we have a NIC card associated on this virtual machine, and where you will get two IP addresses on your NIC card, public and private, correct? And there would be one firewall associated to this NIC card, and SG network security group, in which you will get two rules, inbound and outbound rule. Now from my local system and from your local system, if you will access this web server, any idea how we will access this web server over the internet?
Yeah, like we type in the FQDN.
FQDN. So by default, you will not get any FQDN for this virtual
Yeah.
machine. You will get only public
Configuration.
IP address.
Yeah.
So what we can do, either we can use this public IP address or we can enable DNS. That means FQDN. Correct? Optionally. So FQDN, DNS is optional here on Azure virtual machines. But if you will create any EC2 instance in Linux, so you will get into default VPC, you will get a DNS name associated to AWS EC2 instances. Okay, so we'll check that, how we will access. Let me go to my virtual machine RDP. As you can see, now web server role is installed. Let me click on close. And now this virtual machine is configured as a IIS web server. Now I'm on my Azure portal where you can see, let me go to overview tab. So on overview, we have a public IP address. There's no DNS name associated. We can configure, but that is optional. So let me copy this public IP address and let me paste into chat box also, so that you all can check, just because now this web application is configured publicly and we all can access this over the internet. So I'm going to copy and paste this IP address into my browser tab and you all can access into your browser tab. So initially we all will get error. So whenever you will copy and paste this address into your browser tab, you will get error, correct? So check and confirm. So users from internet, they are sending requests, correct? But they're not getting response from my web server. Hope no one is getting response from this public IP address. Why?
Firewall.
Correct. So if I'm sending a request, it means I'm sending a request on port number 80 using HTTP protocol. Correct. So I'm sending a request to my virtual machine NIC card where we have public IP address associated. So this request will be sent to my firewall. In firewall, in inbound section, just go, this would be an inbound request for my virtual machine, for my web server. On firewall, in inbound section, port 80 should be open. It should be open, it should be allowed. But if you remember, only RDP is allowed into our firewall inbound section. So it means first we have to configure firewall so that it can entertain port 80 request over the internet, correct? So let me show you how we will do that. So simply you need to go to your virtual machine. On your virtual machine left hand side, you will get networking tab, which you can see network settings. So click on network settings, where you would be able to see here there's a firewall associated where we have inbound rule, we have outbound rule, correct? Inbound and outbound rule. And in inbound section we have RDP, which is open only, correct? So let me click on create a rule here. So click on create inbound port rule. Where we will create a rule, we will create into inbound direction so that we can entertain incoming request. Source any, just because I can receive requests from anywhere over the internet. It's a web server. Source port range any. Destination right now I'm going to select here any, but you can select any virtual network, any IP address, any service tag, or application security group. I'm going to select here any right now. Then service. Under service, you will click on drop down and you will select here HTTP. We are going to open HTTP. Then action, allow, just because by default that is denied. Priority, so there would be some priority numbers on your firewall rule, which we will discuss in next task. So by default you will get some priority number, that is okay. Name, you will get some default name which you can customize, you can change, that is totally up to you. I'm going with default name. Description is optional. Let me click on add here. So whenever I will click on add here, as you can see, this rule will be added here, correct? And once this rule will be added, if I will refresh my browser tab now, so this IIS default page will be now available for all of us. Yes, Sangram.
Can this be configured through the server as well?
So inside, that means you're talking about inside the
The
server,
advanced
correct?
settings, yeah, or the firewall.
So
Inbound rules.
in our virtual machine, inside our virtual machine, we have a operating system firewall as well,
Yeah.
which should be also work. So inside that firewall, HTTP is already open, correct?
Yeah.
But yes, you can manage. You can manage.
So there are other settings for COM3 and other things as well.
Correct.
Yeah.
So we can manage our internal firewall as well, that is operating system firewall as well for Windows. And for Linux, we can configure IP tables. Yes, Dikuma, who is this? You raise your
Hello,
hand.
sir. My name is Dheeraj.
Dheeraj, yeah.
So this is actually a hybrid environment I have set up for my personal lab, and I'm trying to go through your videos because they enrolled me quite late in the training, so I could not attend previous classes. So I don't know if this question is relevant, but maybe you can answer in the end also. I will just ask, okay, if you allow me.
Mhm.
So basically, I have in my laptop, I installed two domain controllers, and I deployed one another virtual machine in Azure, like this only. My challenge is I want to make a domain controller in Azure as well, and I want to join it to my on-premises domain controller, and I'm not able to find out how do I solve this issue. Is this possible?
That is possible. So what you should do first, so just because, let me draw here your scenario so that we all can understand this, correct? Let me
Yeah,
answer
because
this
this is
right
known
now.
scenario in every organization.
So no worries, no worries. Let me show you. So first of all, this would be your Azure infra, Azure
Mhm,
cloud, correct? Where you have
mhm,
one VNet, in which
mhm,
you have one virtual machine, which
mhm,
would be either into default subnet or into some custom subnet, correct?
mhm,
And which you want to set up like either ADC, correct?
mhm, mhm. Yeah.
Additional domain control. And
Yes.
now
But
here
how
we
can
have
I
our
set up
on
it as 80? Sorry.
one, one, one,
Uh,
one, one, one second, one second. Let me draw here
okay,
first.
okay.
This would be our on-prem part. That means your
Uh-huh.
local laptop, local desktop, local computer in which might be
Yeah.
using VMware client, correct, or Oracle
Mm-hmm.
VirtualBox, correct.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So assume this would be my on-prem where I'm using a server which I set up as a DC, domain
Mm-hmm.
controller,
Mm-hmm.
my PDC, primary domain
Mm.
controller. Now
Right.
what I want, I can create another server into cloud, correct,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and which should join my primary domain controller first, and then I will set up this server as a ADC, additional domain
Right.
controller. So this would be
Right.
my first domain controller. This would be my backup domain controller in cloud.
Mm-hmm.
Correct?
Mm-hmm.
That is your
But
requirement, na?
yeah, requirement. But for that, first I will have to join this what Azure server to the domain, which I'm not
Correct,
able to
correct.
do.
So that, that's what I'm saying. So first you have to join this server into this domain. Second, you will set up this server as a ADC.
Exactly.
Correct?
But how?
Or what you can do, you can join offline as well. If you remember, we have an option into Azure, into on-premise Active Directory where you can copy your all files into a pen drive, correct, which you can move into this virtual machine, and you can set up this server as a ADC, and later once you will enable synchronization, that means connectivity will be enabled. So this
Right.
system will join your DC. That is also possible.
So
Correct?
that is my question. How do I make this Azure machine join to my on-premises? That is my main challenge.
So just because it's a hybrid environment, So you should have connectivity, which you can set up using VPN.
Okay, so VPN is the only way, right? There's another way.
So VPN, and if you're using single system, a single laptop, in that case, you can configure point to site VPN connection.
Do we have this part of our course in this
No,
AZ104?
No.
Oh shit, okay. Okay, so
But
I will
no,
have to
no
again.
worries. But no worries, just because I already recorded. Just because I'm getting this type of queries, and based on your queries, I'm creating a recorded session, a recorded lab, so that I can help you out of the box. Correct? So
Yeah,
I
thank you
already
so
have
much.
a recorded session for point to site configuration, VPN configuration, through which you can connect your laptop to Azure VNet, and you will be connected internally. And later you can join your all virtual machines into your physical domain.
Thank you, sir. Then I will really appreciate if you can share that lab.
Definitely, I'll do that.
Yeah.
But
Thank
not
you.
right now.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so let's move to next part. As you can see now, I'm getting here IIS default web page, and I hope you all are getting this web page. I would request all of you to check and confirm you all are getting this web page into your system, correct? Using that IP address which I shared in the chat box. Now I'm going to customize this server. So I have a custom web application. Let me show you. So I have a custom web application which is created into HTML and CSS. Let me copy my custom web application content, which you can see that is on my local laptop. Correct. So let me copy this content and let me go inside my virtual machine, Azure Virtual Machine. Then I'm going inside my File Explorer, inside my Azure Virtual Machine. Any idea what would be default path for IIS into
INET
Windows
pub,
Server?
www root INET pub.
So first you will go to this PC, then C drive. Under C drive you will get INET pub folder, which you have to open, in which you will get www root folder. So open this folder, www root, in which you will get your default website content, which I'm going to delete. So I deleted my default website. If I will refresh my page now, so I will get an authorization error here, which you can see. Just because my page is now deleted. My HTML page is deleted for my website. Now let me paste here my custom web application, which you can see. I'm going to copy and paste from local system to inside Azure Virtual Machine, and copy and paste is allowed in Azure Virtual Machine. So you can copy your content from local system to Azure Virtual Machine directly. Once it will be done, we would be able to see that we all are able to access my custom web application. So as you can see, now content is copied here. So go and refresh your page and check which website you all are getting. So you all will get my custom web application, my portfolio website. So if I'll refresh here, you can see now we are getting a customized web application. Correct? And that is accessible over the internet. Anyone can access this web application using that public IP address. So first task is done.
A quick question about customizing these portfolios. I mean, how these files are created. How have you customized those? I mean,
Again,
some
so
product specific or like whatever you have, we see on the screen. I am Sanjay Singh, software administrator and all.
So what you can do simply, just because again when it comes to web development, so just because we are not a web developer, correct?
Yeah.
So what we can do, being a server administrator, let me show you a few websites. One website from where you can download templates and which you can customize. Again, you need to do smart work, like I have already done. Correct. So you will get some sample templates which you need to open either into Visual Code, Visual Studio, and where you can customize. Correct. So, and you should have knowledge of basic knowledge of HTML. So let me show you, like you can search on Google, download HTML, CSS templates.
This is what exactly I have to do for my production servers actually.
So here you can see.
Yeah.
So first site, free CSS, where you can download templates based on your requirement. So here you can see we have templates available here. Or what we can do, if we have some custom requirement, we can click on search, and on search, let me click on categories, where you would be able to see you will get different categories for education, entertainment, e-commerce, and you will get different types of templates for hotels, correct, industry, which you can download. Like if I have to download a template for e-commerce, let me check if we have any template here for e-commerce. Yes, let me click on this category, where you can see we have templates, sample templates, which I can download, which you can download. So simply you need to click on any template. Like I'm going to click on this coffee template, which you can see here, and you can download this template and you will get complete content, which you can easily customize.
Right. Thank you.
Welcome. So let me share this website in the chat box also, so you can save this website later for your reference. So you can also test your web application using any template which you can download. Correct. So now first step we have already configured. We created one web application into Azure Virtual Machine, and which is now accessible over the internet. Correct. Let's move to next step. Next step, where how I can access this web application, which you can see I'm able to access this web application using this IP address. Correct. So let me go to my PPT and let me draw again here. So here we have public subnet, in which we have our web application. Correct. And we have some IP address, public IP address, like 202020, assume this would be my public IP address, and I'm able to access my web application, and my users are able to access this web application through their laptop, desktop, over the internet using this public IP address. But they need some name, just because I'm not going to bother my end users to remember my public IP address. So how I will set up a name for my web application? What would be next step?
Going back to IIS and create those.
Again, ultimately, if you will set up anything into IIS, but you should have some DNS, public DNS name. So in IIS, we already set up our virtual machine, our web application, correct? Which is accessible. Now the only change which we want here, that my end user should access this this web application over the internet using some name like www.sanjaycloud.com. How they will access?
Adding the server to a domain and then creating a self-signed certificate.
SSL is the only for security reasons. So where we can provide end-to-end encryption to our end user into browser, correct? But initially my requirement is this website should be accessible over the internet using a name, which should be accessible over the internet. Anyone else who can explain this? What would be our next step now? Just because, as if you remember, we are testing here production related lab. Now this would be a production task. So where you configure a web server and you have a public IP address now. So you have to set up now DNS. I hope you heard about DNS.
Yeah, we can route this, we can create a DNS record in the domain controller with this IP.
So whatever DNS you are getting into your domain controller, that is your internal DNS, correct?
Right.
So when it comes to infrastructure, let me show you. Let me open raw.io. If you remember day one. So let me show you once again. So here you can see. Now inside your organization, inside your data center, you will set up a DC, correct domain controller, where you have an internal DNS. Internal DNS in which you will configure a forwarder. Just because when it comes to routing your traffic over the internet, you have to purchase a public DNS, and which you will place into a DMZ network. What is DMZ network?
It's a demilitarized zone where we have some netted, netting also configured. Restricted zone for access to external users, maybe.
Correct. So if you remember, like web server is accessible over the internet, and which can receive traffic from internet, correct? From anonymous traffic we can receive. So we cannot place this web server inside our organization network, internal network. Why? If there would be any attack, our internal network will be also hacked, correct? Which we don't want. So what we will do, we will place this web server into demilitarized zone, into a parameter network. Similarly, you have an internal DNS, you will purchase an external DNS also, public DNS also, which you will place into a DMZ network, that was outside of your organization network, and where into your internal DNS you will configure a forwarder. So if you are receiving any request for that particular address, so this request will be forwarded to your external DNS, and then external DNS will route that request to your particular IP address. Then this would be the configuration. Correct. So it's a high level diagram which I'm showing you here. So similarly, now here what we have to do as per our requirement, we have to set up a DNS. Now what is DNS? DNS is basically domain name system, which use port number 53, and it will map your IP address into a name and vice versa. Correct. When it comes to name, this name is known as FQDN, fully qualified domain name. Any idea what is fully qualified domain name? So assume here we have a server.
It's a fully qualified domain name includes your machine name plus entire domain. For example, your machine is abc.tripsandfly.com.
So let's assume we have a server here, server name, that is computer name is SRV1. Then my domain name is xyz.com, and then there would be some IP address on your virtual machine, which would be 10.0.0.1. So if I'm talking about FQDN, so FQDN means we're talking about computer name plus domain name. Correct? So which would be srv1.xyz.com. This would be your FQDN, fully qualified domain name. Correct? And which will be mapped to your corresponding IP address 10.0.0.1. So either you can access this server using this name or using this IP address. So if you can remember IP address, you can access this server using IP address, or you can access this server using name. So now remembering name is easy as compared to numbers. Correct? That's why we are using DNS here. So what I want, now my requirement is, right now my web application is accessible over a public IP address. What I want, it should be accessible through a name. So first I have to purchase a DNS name as per my organization, like HCL.com, Wipro.com, Ericsson.com. So I have to purchase a DNS from third party. Correct? So like I purchase my DNS from GoDaddy, Big Rock, or any other third party. So which I'm going to show you. Let me show you here. I already purchased a DNS so that I can show you this production lab. So let me go to GoDaddy, where I purchase a domain. So you need to go to your domain provider console where you purchase your domain name. So first you have to purchase a domain. Then you need to go to DNS tab. Now under DNS you have to select your domain name. Like I purchased two domains here, which you can see, sanjayaws.com for AWS trainings and sanjaycloud.com for Azure trainings. So let me select here sanjaycloud.com. This would be my DNS domain name, which I purchased from GoDaddy. Now here you can see you will get your DNS records. First option, I can add my record here for Azure website. Any idea how I will add a record here for Azure website?
You'll go to add new record, and there you may create MX record and TXT record there.
MX record is only for mailing server.
Right.
Correct? And we are not going to configure mailing. So first we will configure here a record.
A record. Okay, yes.
Correct. And here in name you will add @ if you are going to use your name. That means sanjaycloud.com. If I'm going to use same name, I will use @ here. Then value would be my public IP address of virtual machine. Azure virtual machine public IP address, which I will copy from here and I'll paste here. So I will create a record here. You can see there would be some TTL which you can configure. Then click on save. This record will be added here. Now what happens if any user who will send a request to www.sanjaycloud.com, this request will be go to, first of all, the domain provider GoDaddy. In GoDaddy we have name servers, correct? That means internet servers, who will route your request to your IP address. And then you will get a response from this public IP address. This would be the way. But here, if you will check, we have to manage two portals. One, Azure, and second, GoDaddy. Correct? One is Azure, second is GoDaddy, which might be I don't want. And what if name servers will be down from GoDaddy? So it means my website will be down if name servers will be down. So in that case, what you will do, how you will set up, how you will get a highly available and scalable DNS. What if you're getting more queries? In that case, what we can do, we can create a DNS on Azure as well, and which we will integrate with this GoDaddy, so that you don't have to manage your DNS on GoDaddy portal. You can manage your DNS on Azure only. Let me show you. So now our infrastructure is ready. We have to only configure DNS, and you cannot perform this lab just because if you want to test this lab, you should have a public DNS. But just because session will be recorded, so it will help all of you if you will set up a DNS into your organization. Correct? So in search bar, I'm going to search here DNS. You will get two types of DNS, public and private DNS. So DNS zone means public DNS. Private DNS means private internal DNS. Like the diagram which I already shown you, internal DNS, correct, which will be connected to your DC, domain controller. I'm going with DNS zone just because I'm going to set up a public DNS. So select DNS zone, then click on create. Here I'm going to use my existing resource group. Domain name, you have to provide same domain name which you purchased from GoDaddy. So sanjaycloud.com. It will automatically pick a region, that is okay, just because it's a global service. Click on next tag, a review, and then create. Now creating, I can create google.com as well. I can create microsoft.com as well into my Azure account, but it doesn't mean that it will work. So creating sanjaycloud.com doesn't mean that it will work publicly. So we have to purchase this domain name, as you can see, which I already purchased. And after that you have to integrate. And how you will do integration, that is the important task, which I'm going to show you, which no one will show you, correct? Let me go to resource. That means I'm on my DNS console, which I created into Azure, sanjaycloud.com. And where you can see Microsoft will give you 4 name servers, which you can see here, which I highlighted, correct? Now you need to go to GoDaddy simply, and on GoDaddy under DNS you will get name servers tab, which you can see, where we have 2 name servers which are managed by GoDaddy. I'm going to click on change name server, and it would be an administrative action. So select I will use my own name servers, and Microsoft will provide you 4 name servers. So add 4 name servers column, and then go to your Azure portal, copy one by one your all name servers and paste here. So first name server, after every name server you will get a dot which you have to remove. Then second name server, paste here, remove dot. Third name server, paste here, remove dot. Fourth name server, paste here, remove dot, and click on save. Whenever you will update name server into your domain provider's console, correct, you would be able to see here in DNS records, all records will be removed now. Let me show you. So right now all records are available. Let me refresh my browser tab. So now all records will be removed from here, which you can see here. So we can't display your DNS information because your name servers aren't managed by us. Now, who is managing name server? Microsoft. So what it does mean? It means whatever record you are going to now add or create or modify, there's no need to access this GoDaddy portal. Set up your all DNS record on Azure. Now, no need to access GoDaddy portal. So on same portal, on Azure portal, we can manage our public DNS also. Yes, Dheeraj.
So what you're saying is, even in our organization, let's say initially I started working with a new client and I have to do the setup. There also they do the same thing, like
Yes.
GoDaddy or service provider will give the domain name.
Dheeraj, we need to understand one thing. Like if my client is, let's assume, an e-commerce client, correct? So
Right.
whom name is, let's assume, abc.com, xyz.com. So first they will register a domain name into GoDaddy or any third party, correct? So first of all, they will register some name, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
So they have registered already a name which they purchased from GoDaddy, BigRock, or any provider, domain provider, correct?
Uh-huh.
Now
Okay.
your task is you have to integrate a DS on Azure so that you can manage their Azure portal rather than managing on GoDaddy. Up to you. If you are flexible, where you can manage their domain records into their domain providers console, in that case you can manage there also. So that is totally up to you, up to your flexibility. On Azure DNS, what benefit we will get? We will get highly available and scalable DNS, just because that is managed by Microsoft. So you will get high availability and scalability. It will auto scale based on the number of requests
Of course, yeah.
which you will get, correct? As compared to domain providers.
So now can I say that I have 4 DNS service provider in this DNS zone, public DNS zone?
4 name servers.
Name
and which
servers.
you can see .com, .net, .org, .info. So might be later I will purchase another DNS which will be .net, sanjaycloud.net, sanjaycloud.org, sanjaycloud.info subdomains, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So you will get 4 name servers here, which would be redundant.
For example, I purchased a domain tripsandfly.com 5 years back. Now I also own tripsandfly.info and tripsandfly.com.
Correct.
But if I set up, because I was about to actually do this, but just after seeing this video today, I got to know I would have removed my production domain actually, because they will remove all the DNS when I do this, right? All the DNS changes, which is hosting my website currently. Correct. So it will be removed. My website will be down.
Correct.
So, but after doing this, I will have to host all my website from the server which I'm creating on the Azure, correct?
Correct. Let me show you now. So now
Yeah.
GoDaddy's records are removed, which you can see here.
Yes.
So if GoDaddy's names of records will be removed, it means my existing records are now deleted or removed, correct? So there would be downtime, correct? So what we have to do, we have to create record here in that case. So let me click on add records. Where first record I'm going to create here a record for my website, Azure website. I'm going to use here my nickname, that is sanjaycloud.com. Record type will be A. As you can see, you will get all types of record here. A, 4 time A, MX text, correct? All records you will get here. So A record, then your record alias, no, and IP address. IP address I need to copy from my virtual machine. So let me copy public IP address of my VM. And let me paste into my DNS.
Sir, sorry, I have one question in this.
One second. Let me finish this first.
Okay.
So here you can see a record, name will be sanjaycloud.com, and this would be my corresponding IP address. Let me click on OK. This record will be added here, which you can see a record. So similarly, I will add all the records manually here, one by one, correct? Once I will done with this, if I will search now sanjaycloud.com on internet, it will be accessible. So I would request all of you to check sanjaycloud.com. As you can see now, my website is accessible over this DNS name, and that is accessible publicly using this name sanjaycloud.com. So check and confirm. Yes.
It is visible. So sir, but in some cases, for example, you just created a record using the public IP. If I create this a record using only private IP, and I want my internal organization employees only to open, which is called intranet, right? Then I can do this entry with private IP, right? Public
So
IP is not required.
in that case, we are not going to use this public DNS service. First of all, public DNS means what? Public DNS means
Oh,
we are talking about public
okay.
addresses,
Yes,
correct?
yes.
In that case, we will
Understood.
create a private DNS, internal DNS, correct? And where we will create our records.
Okay, so
For
that's
internal.
why in our organization there are some sites which are only internally available and
Correct.
some are externally available. So this is the setup that some host from private DNS and some host from public DNS.
Correct. When
Okay.
it comes to this kind of requirement, now you should have a clear visibility up to architect level, correct? So that you can understand complete infrastructure.
Okay.
Correct. So when we're talking about intranet, internal organization website, again we will set up an internal DNS. Correct.
Okay.
And our website will be accessible using a private IP address, not public.
I get your point.
Oh,
Okay, thank you.
So what about others? I hope you all are able to access this website now. And if you have any query, you can ask a question. I hope this part is clear to everyone. If you have any query, you can ask a question.
Yeah, hi Sanjay. I have a quick question. In the beginning of the lab, you show the public IP address is 192.168.0.0, right? And then you want to set up the private as 192.168.1.0. Is it automatic when for the first one that's automatically public, and the second one 192.168.1 is automatically private?
No. If that is only naming convention, correct? So I assigned a name here, public and private. But by default, you will get, as you can see, I have two virtual machines here, where on my public VM, I have a public IP address associated. That's why this virtual machine is public, correct? On private VM, there's no public IP address associated, just because I changed this option, correct? So while deploying a virtual machine into Azure, it doesn't matter in which subnet you are deploying your virtual machine, public or private. By default, your all VMs will be public. By default, remember that. Correct? That's why we are understanding here VNet. Correct? And that's why I customize the second virtual machine configuration, where you can see there's no public IP address associated. So if I will open this virtual machine, I will get only a private IP address, which you can see that is 192.168.1.4. Correct?
Okay.
And there's
so
no public
okay.
IP address.
Okay, you didn't configure it. Okay.
Correct. But remember one thing, into Azure, if you will deploy any virtual machine with default configuration, by default your all VMs will become public virtual machine. Remember that. By default your all VMs will become public virtual machine. Correct?
Okay.
So
Okay.
you would be responsible for deciding that which VM will become public or which will become private. Correct? You will decide that.
Sanjay, you also mentioned about this DMZ. I'm not sure if some basic things of networking has been covered in previous session.
So
Are they already?
Again, we are learning here Azure Cloud, correct? So DMZ and other things you will learn into server administration course, Windows Server administration course. So we have separate course.
Okay.
So I cannot cover all the basics yet. That is the prerequisite to understand Azure administration course, correct? But still I'm trying to give you overview so that you all can relate.
Yeah, definitely. I understand.
Okay. So we are done with first task where we created a virtual machine. We set up that virtual machine as a web server. We configured our DNS. We associated our DNS. And now my website is accessible over the internet using that name, public name, correct? Next option, second virtual machine, private VM. So as you can see on private VM, we have only a private IP address and I cannot access this virtual machine over the internet. Why? Just because there's only a private IP address associated on this virtual machine. So if I have to access this virtual machine, I need to associate a public IP address. How I'll do that? So I will go to network section, left hand side, you can see there's a network settings. So you need to go to network settings tab, where you can see you will get your nickname, network interface, which you can see here. Correct. You need to open this network interface. So click on it and you will be redirected to your network interface card. Left hand side, you will get IP configuration tab, and under IP configuration, you will get IP config 1, which you have to open. So click on IP config 1, it will be open, where you can see we have an option associate public IP address. You have to select this option. You can use existing public IP address if you have any existing public IP address, which should be free. Or what you can do, you will get an option here, create a public IP address. So let me click on create. So while creating public IP address, we have two SKUs for public IP address, basic and standard. Correct? So in basic, you will not get any SLA, and it will be open for all inbound request. So it means it's not secure. When it comes to standard, standard will be secure and inbound will be restricted. So you can open from your firewall. And next thing, in standard, you will get only one assignment, which will be static, and that is grayed out. It means you cannot change assignment type. So this would be a static assignment, static IP address. When it comes to basic, we can choose either static or dynamic. That means in basic, you will get option to choose dynamic or static. Otherwise, in standard, we have only static IP address assignment. I'm going with standard here. Let me click on OK. Let me click on save. So it will create a new public IP address, and which will be associated to your VM NIC card, private virtual machine NIC card, so that you can access your private VM over the internet. So it will take few minutes. Meanwhile, I'm going to my GoDaddy portal, where I'm going to change my name servers. And let me use GoDaddy's name server. Just because we are already done with DNS lab. So let me change my configuration to default. And let me close this GoDaddy portal. So we are done with this update. Failed to update your network interface. Why? Let me check. DNS record, public address centralized, cloud reserved by another resource. So what it does mean? It means, first of all, you have to reserve a name which will be provided by Microsoft. What it does mean? Let me show you. So let me open a duplicate tab. So most of the cases, you will get a resolution solution into your error. So you should read your error first. So let me go to my virtual machine, private VM. And let me do one thing. Let me create a public IP address here manually. So search public IP address. Click on create public IP address. Resource group will be existing. Region will be same, where you have your virtual machine name. Name I'm going to give here private -PIP1. That means private virtual machine public IP address 1. Version will be IPv4. SKU will be standard. Zone redundancy you will get, if you remember, you will get SLA into standard SKU, which you will not get into basic. There is no zone redundancy. Let me select a standard, and then assignment will be static here only, and DNS label, which you can see here. So we have to provide a DNS name also, so which I'm going to give here Sanjay Cloud. Let me check this name is available or not. Next, you need to click on review, and it's a regional IP address. We can choose between regional and global. So if I'm going to use any global service like Azure Front Door, Azure load balancer, global load balancer, which requires a global IP address, in that case I will choose global IP address. Otherwise, virtual machines are virtual machine is a regional service, so you need a regional public IP address. So let me click on create. As you can see, now my public IP address will be created here, and once it will be created, so we would be able to associate this public IP address to our existing virtual machine. So create individually your public IP address, which you can see, which is created. Now let me go back to my previous tab, and let me open ipconfig 1. Let me select here associate public IP address, and let me use my existing, which you can see, private public IP address. Let me click on save. And let me update this. Yes, Dheeraj.
So when we create a virtual machine, automatically the public IP and private IP both gets assigned.
Correct.
So why are we now creating this public IP?
Just because what if there would be no public IP address assigned to your any existing virtual machine, how you will create and assign public IP address.
Oh,
So
but
we are
generally
learning
does
a
this happen?
customization.
Okay, okay, custom, okay.
Neeraj,
Okay,
I think you
yeah.
are talking about the corporate environment.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
I'm
there we
actually in a
always get that.
situation where I'm going through a lot of things and I'm trying to just relate
Yeah.
everything with this.
In
So
our corporate environment, it always gets assigned.
Yeah.
it depends. It depends, Sangram. Basically, when it comes to business critical resources, you will not get
Yeah.
directly associated public IP address on your virtual
Yeah, that's
machine.
right. That's right again.
Correct? Yeah. As per the
There are
compliance,
not
there would be
many
no public.
restrictions with the network part rather.
Correct. So again, it's failed. Again, let me check. So network interface, DNS record, private, public address dot center cloud is already reserved by another resource. So let me check for which resource that is reserved. So where is the DNS part? For this virtual machine, let me go back to my duplicate tab and let me open virtual machine here. Okay, there's no name reserved. Let me open this private IP address and let me check here. So Sanjay Cloud, that is assigned to my public IP address. That is okay. Okay, so on this resource, on this NIC card, DNS name is already reserved. So let me check that. Let me go to DNS servers tab. So inherit from virtual network, no. So let me click on custom. And here we will save, we will add a DNS server later. Let me check this. Let me go to IP configuration and let me check here my private IP address. So you can change your private IP address assignment also, but default assignment is dynamic and you can change to static and you can provide a fixed IP address to your virtual machine, which you can do that. Let me again select my private IP address and let me save here. So most of the cases into your organization, you will not get public IP address associated to your resource. In any case, if you have to associate a public IP address, so how you will associate that we are learning in this task, correct? And one more thing, on your virtual machine, you will not get any firewall, as you can see. That's why we created this virtual machine with custom actions, correct? So where you can see under network settings, there's no firewall associated. There's no rule available. It means there's no firewall. So what we are going to do, we are going to create a custom firewall also. So let me show you that also. Meanwhile, my public IP address will be associated to virtual machine. So we are going to search here NSG, Network Security Group, and you have to select this service, then click on create. Public is already available just because by default it get created. Let me create a new security group for private virtual machine. So select your existing resource group, NSG name. So private VM NSG network security group. You can give any name, totally up to you, but should be meaningful. The region should be same where you have your virtual machine. Then click on review and create. Click on create. Firewall will be created. As you can see, firewall is created. So let me open this firewall and let me explain you this firewall as well. So inside this firewall, you will get two sections, inbound rule and outbound rule. In inbound rule, you will get 3 default rules. In outbound rule, you will get 3 default rules. Let me explain you first 3 inbound rule, default rules. So first of all, we cannot delete these rules. All rules are grayed out. So you cannot delete default rule. What it state, so read this rule. Allow VNet inbound. Any port, any protocol. Source will be virtual network, destination will be virtual network. Action is allowed. Any idea what is the meaning of this rule? How this rule will impact within the VNet? Any idea? Why we are using subnets? Inside our organization, why we are using subnet? Any idea?
Basic idea I have is, for example, we have multiple domain controller and we need to define the sites. So by subnet, we can define that, okay, these are the number of sites part of this subnet. Means you can define how many machines.
Right now you're talking about Azure AD sites and services, correct?
Yeah.
In
For
which
example,
you are creating subnets, and creating subnets means we are isolating our domain controllers.
Isolate. Yes, exactly. That's the
Correct?
right word. Yes.
So we are creating a boundary, a network boundary
Boundary.
for a domain controller, and domain controller will be replicated within that boundary only. Later we can configure intersite or intrasite replication, correct?
Yes.
Using subnets. So here into your organization, we are creating subnets for isolation purpose. What it does mean by isolation? It means if I will place my resources into public subnet, so all resources would be able to communicate within the subnet, but outside the subnet, across the subnet, there should be no communication. And that is the concept of subnets for isolation, for isolating your departments, isolating your tiers. But when it comes to Microsoft Azure, in Azure, by default, communication is allowed across the subnets. Within the VNet, if I have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 subnets, so by default, communication is allowed within the VNet. Why? Just because of NSG first rule in inbound, which you can see. Allow VNet inbound. Any port, any protocol. Source will be virtual network, destination will be virtual network. Action is allowed. It means within the VNet, doesn't matter how many subnets I have, by default, all inbound traffic will be open by default, just because of my default rule of NSG. Second rule which state allow Azure load balancer. So if you are going to configure any Azure load balancer, so any port, any protocol. Source will be load balancer. Destination will be any from anywhere. Action is allowed. So all inbound traffic to any port, any protocol is allowed by your load balancer by default. Third rule, except the first two rules, all traffic is denied by your firewall. Except the first rule, all traffic will be denied. Let me read now outbound security rule. In outbound security rule, first rule states allow VNet outbound, any port, any protocol. Source will be virtual network, destination will be virtual network. So what it does mean? It means bi-directional communication is open within the VNet. So all inbound and outbound, most traffics are allowed within the VNet. So within the VNet, there is no restriction. If I have to restrict, what I will do, either I can configure my operating system firewall, or I have to add a rule here, a split rule. Yes, Sangram.
Yeah, how about the express route?
Express route is a different thing. We will discuss in a different module, correct?
Okay, we are going to.
Right.
Yeah.
We have introduction of express route, which we will discuss.
Okay, thanks.
Welcome. Next rule into outbound section, which you can see here, allow internet outbound. So what it does mean? It means by default within your virtual machines, you will get outbound internet access. It means you can access internet inside your virtual machine just because of this default rule. Correct? And due to compliance, if you have to block, like as you remember, saying private. So private subnet means my resource, it cannot send any outbound internet traffic, but by default there is a rule which states that you can access internet inside a virtual machine. It means you have to disable this rule, but we cannot delete this default rule. So what we can do, we can create explicit rule, explicit deny rule. Correct. When it comes to managing firewall, in firewall there is a basic concept which is known as priority of your rules. So if you are going to add any rule, and if you have two identical rules and which are having different actions like allow and deny. So assume we have a rule here which have a priority 100, port any, protocol any, source VNet, destination VNet, action allow. Then we have other rule which have a priority 200, same configuration, action is now deny. So which rule will take precedence, first or second? So rule which is having a high priority. Now how we would know which rule is having high priority? So lower the number, higher the priority. And that is the concept of firewall. Every firewall, lower the number, higher the priority. So first rule will take precedence over this second rule. So similarly, if I have to override any existing rule, where you can see we have some priority numbers, correct? So what we will do, we will create same identical rule with deny action and using some lower number, lower than this number, so that we can disable internet inside our virtual machine. I'm going to show you practically this, correct? I hope this part is clear to everyone. If you have any query, you can ask a question. And when it comes to creating custom rules into a firewall, into Azure firewall, we can assign numbers, that is priority numbers between 100 to 4096. And that is the range 4096, which we can use for NSG. So let's do one thing. Let's take a short break, and after the break, I'll show you how we will associate this NSG to our virtual machine and how we will filter our traffic into inbound and into outbound, and then this module will be complete, correct? So let's take short break, 15-minute break. We will resume our session after 15 minutes, and then we will continue with virtual network. So we have created a NSG. Now let me show you how we will associate this NSG to our virtual machine. So you need to go to your NSG console, Network Security Group console, and left hand side on your Network Security Group, you will get an option network interface. So you have to understand one thing here. We can scope our firewall at two levels. First, subnet, second, NIC level. So subnet is optional. On NIC level, you will associate, and by default, if you will get any virtual machine, by default, your firewall will be associated to NIC level. Optionally, we can associate to our subnet level as well, so that we would be able to restrict all the VMs within our subnet, and we can filter traffic, common traffic, correct? So here, left hand side, you will get network interfaces. Select network interfaces. Click on associate. You will get available network interface. That means network interface which will be free. So it's one-to-one mapping. Click on drop down where you can see public is not free. That is already associated to other NSG. Let me select a private and then click on OK. So this firewall will be associated to my private virtual machine. Now let me go back to my previous tab where you can see, if you remember, we updated our public IP address, which you can see updated network interface 29 minutes ago. That is done successfully. So where you can see now we have a public IP address on our private virtual machine. So let me go to my virtual machines tab. Let me open private VM, and we have a public IP address on private virtual machine. We have a private IP address, and we have a NSG, which you can see from left hand side network settings tab, where you would be able to see we have inbound and outbound rules here. Let me go to overview tab and let me download RDP for private virtual machine. So wait for validation. Once validation will be passed, we would be able to connect. As you can see, prerequisite failed. Why? port 3389 that is not open into inbound direction. So it means before going to download this RDP, we have to configure our firewall so that we would be able to get RDP of this virtual machine. So left hand side, go to network settings. Now under rules tab, there is a tab at right hand side, create port rule, create inbound port rule. Why? Just because if I will send any request to Azure virtual machine from my local system, it means I'm sending an inbound request. If you will send any request inside your Azure virtual machine to outside internet, that is known as outbound request. So source any, where you can select any IP address as well, or my IP, that is client IP address as well, whom you can allow to get RDP of your virtual machine. I'm going with any. Source port range any, destination any, service will be RDP. So under service, you will select RDP. Action will be allow, priority which you can see, it will start with first range which will be 100. Then name which you can customize. I'm going with default name. Let me click on add. So RDP will be added into your firewall inbound section. Once it will be added, go back to connect tab, click on select native RDP and wait for validation. Let me refresh first of all my virtual machine. So after adding your firewall rule, refresh your virtual machine, then go back to connect tab, click on select RDP, download RDP file and connect your RDP file. So you will get pop-up here, username and password. Type your username and password. Your private VM will be connected. So as you can see, my private virtual machine is connected here. Now we have two RDPs here, public and private. Let me show you public virtual machine IP address first. So let me open a command prompt where I'm going to check my IP address. I will run ipconfig command to check my local IP address, private IP address, where you can see I have a private IP address 192.168.0.4 from my public subnet. Let me go to private virtual machine and let me check private virtual machine IP address. Let me close this server manager bar. Let me open command prompt here into private VM and ipconfig. So my IP address is 192.168.1.4. Let me check my communication from private to public. So we will use ping command, ping space, your remote virtual machine IP address 192.168.0.4, my public virtual machine IP address, and space -t for continuous reply. Press enter. You will not get any reply from public virtual machine. Let me go to public VM and let me do the same thing here. So ping space 192.168.1.4 private virtual machine IP address -t. As you can see, we are not getting any reply. Any idea why I'm not getting reply? Where in my firewall, Azure firewall, internal traffic, any port, any protocol, inbound, outbound, that is allowed. So what would be next step? How we will troubleshoot? Why we are not getting reply? It should be connected. Any idea? Any guesses?
Is the firewall on?
Which firewall? Operating system or Azure?
Operating system.
Yeah, that is on. By default, in Windows Server, firewall will be on. Operating system firewall will be on. So let me show you. In my first virtual machine, where I'm on my public virtual machine, let me search here firewall.cpl. Run this command. It will open your firewall configuration where you can see firewall is on. Correct? It means this firewall is blocking ICMP traffic. Correct? Inside this operating system. So left hand side here, you will get advanced settings tab. click on advanced setting, where you will get inbound and outbound rule. So first option, what I can do, I can stop my internal firewall, operating system firewall, but stopping or blocking internal firewall of operating system, that is not a best practice. Correct? So you should have knowledge of how to open ports and protocol. So let me show you. Let me show you once again how you will navigate to this option. So simply you need to open run into your virtual machine, then you need to type firewall.cpl command and then click on OK. You will get firewall management, where left hand side you will get advanced settings tab. Click on advanced settings. You will get inbound and outbound rules left hand side, your operating system firewall. Click on inbound rule. Any idea which rule we should enable for ICMP in operating system? So in center you can select any rule. So first select any rule in center, like I'm going to select second rule. After then press F key from your keyboard, F key, F for France, correct? Then you will get first rule, file and printer sharing echo request ICMP v4. This rule is responsible for inbound request of ICMP traffic, ping request. Right click and enable this rule. Same rule we have to enable into outbound as well, so that we can enable inbound and outbound both traffic. So in center select any rule, press F key, first rule, file and printer sharing echo request ICMP v4, enable this rule. So now on your private virtual machine, if you will go to, you will get reply. As you can see, reply is started. But on public virtual machine, I'm not getting reply just because I didn't configure firewall on my private VM. So let me open firewall on private virtual machine as well. So firewall.cpl, advanced settings, and same configuration we have to set up here. So inbound rule, in center select any rule, press F key, first rule, file and printer sharing echo request ICMP v4, enable this rule. Into outbound, same rule we have to enable. Close your firewall, go to your public virtual machine, and you can see we are able to get reply from private virtual machine. So that's how you will enable your communication. And as you can see, now we are able to communicate within the VNet from public to private in different VNets. I hope this part is also clear to everyone. How you will check your internal communication within the network communication, private communication.
Sanjay, may I request you to go back again to the inbound rules? There was a network glitch.
No worries. So
Thank you.
firewall, advanced settings, and inbound rule. In center, select any rule first, then press F key. First rule after F key, file and printer sharing echo request ICMP v4. This rule you have to enable into inbound and outbound.
Okay.
Correct?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, next thing. So let me close my command prompt as we have tested our communication. Communication is allowed. Next topic, next scenario. Let me remove my scenario here and let me draw a different scenario so that we can understand next task, which would be our last task for this module practically. So we have now one VNet. VNet you can understand like a LAN environment where we have 192.168.0.0/16 address. Inside VNet we have two subnets, public, private. For public subnet we have a range 192.168.0.0/24, and for private we have a range 192.168.1.0/24. In public subnet we have a virtual machine, in private subnet we have a virtual machine. For public VM we have a private IP address 192.168.0.4, and for private virtual machine we have a IP address 192.168.1.4. What I want internal DNS now. Internal DNS for my virtual machines, so that internally I can access my virtual machine with their names. Any idea how we can set up if you have to set up an internal DNS within the VNet, how you will do that?
Adding it to the domain controller. I mean, adding it as a computer in Active Directory.
Correct. Also, might be this would be my first step. Correct. So where what I have to do, I have to create another virtual machine. Correct. Which would be Windows Server, in which I need to install ADDS role, Active Directory Domain Services role. I need to install DNS role. Correct. And then I will add these virtual machines into the domain created automatically. Correct. And I will update their landing and properties. This would be my first step, where I'm going to use infrastructure as a service, where I have to manage a virtual machine. Now, when it comes to managing a virtual machine, it means what if this virtual machine will be down? So my DNS service will be down. Correct? So Microsoft is offering you a PaaS resource, platform as a service, where this virtual machine in which you will get a local DNS as well as your domain that is managed by Microsoft. You will only manage your records. Rather than managing underlying infrastructure, you will only manage records. So you are not going to manage virtual machine, correct? So it means you will get highly available and scalable resource, which will be managed by Microsoft. So that is totally up to you. If you want to manage a virtual machine, you can create virtual machine and you can set up your DNS if you know how to set up a DNS. If you don't know, if you don't want to manage a virtual machine, you can use PaaS resource, platform as a service resource, where Microsoft will be responsible for underlying infrastructure. Let me show you that also. To use Microsoft DNS, private DNS, we will search here DNS. And as you can see, you will get private DNS zones option. Select the service. Then click on create private DNS, and this would be your internal DNS. Select your resource group so that you can internally you can access your web servers, which will be accessible within the intranet only, and other resources, file server, print server, backup server, web server, which we can access internally in our organization. So name of your DNS. Now, just because this would be my internal DNS, I can give any name. So let me give a name here, which would be Cognitia.com. I can use any domain name, google.com, cognitia.com, isl.com, wipro.com, just because this would be my internal DNS. Next, review and create your DNS. Now, creating DNS doesn't mean, again, that by default it will be integrated with your DNS, your VNet. No. So first step, we have to create an internal DNS with some name. Second, we need to integrate this DNS with our VNet, virtual network. So creating this DNS will take few seconds. It will be done in few. Second, once deployment will be done, I'll show you how we will integrate, how we will connect our VNet.
Okay.
So here you can see deployment is done. Let me go to my domain, my DNS, which you can see cognitia.com. So it means this cognitia.com DNS is hosted on some virtual machine, and that virtual machine is managed by an internal DNS service is managed by Microsoft. We would be responsible only for record sets here. Correct? So left hand side, there is a virtual network links tab. You will click on it. Then click on add a link name. So VNet1, a meaningful name. Then subscription, your virtual network, which you want to bind with this VNet, this DNS, and there is an option enable auto registration. So what it does mean by auto registration? It means whatever resources you have inside this virtual network, it will automatically create a records for all the resources. That means it will map your FQDN into a IP address automatically. You don't have to create record. Later you can create text records, MX records, other records you can create manually, but a record will be created automatically by this option, enable auto registration. Let me show you. Let me click on OK. So this link will be created. As you can see, link is under creation. Once it will be created, you would be able to see on overview tab. Here we will get automatic records for public and private virtual machine. So meanwhile, yes, Dheeraj, you can ask your question.
Can I ask now?
Yes, please go ahead.
Oh, so okay. I understand because I was going through your first video in which you have already described about IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS, and this particular feature is directly PaaS, where Microsoft has configured everything in the background. But in the background, does this work the same way that you install the server and the DNS, uh,
So
and then
they have
you install
automation
those?
template. They have automation templates. So based on
Okay.
your request, they will deploy that template, and that's why we are able to see this resource quickly within few seconds. Correct? So they're using automation in background.
And actually, on your first video, I was just confused between the public cloud, private cloud, and hybrid cloud. I know, but just to clarify, for example, I am now using only SaaS. That will be the part of private cloud, right?
What is SaaS?
So what I understood by that definition, that private cloud is something, for example, I have installed my Active Directory in Azure, and I am the one who is responsible for patching and everything related to my infrastructure, and that is the part of private cloud, right? Or is that a wrong understanding I have?
That is private cloud. That is okay. What is SaaS?
SaaS is just a service, software as a service. For example, I come up with the code, not code actually. For
So
example,
your
I use the
question is
feature.
for private cloud or for SaaS?
No, no,
I'm
I
also
was just
confused
saying.
now.
Okay,
Huh.
now I'm clear. So SaaS is something, for example, I'm using a ready-made solution by Microsoft. For example, Azure
Oh.
Monitor. That is a ready-made solution. So that is SaaS, right?
Office
Okay.
365, CRM, SharePoint, Teams,
Exactly. Yeah.
correct?
Okay. Clear.
Salesforce. All these are SaaS applications.
SaaS.
When we are talking about SaaS, SaaS is only a service model. When you're talking about public cloud, private cloud, hybrid cloud, it means we're talking about cloud, different types of cloud. Correct?
Right,
So
right.
cloud types are different. We have three types of cloud: public, private, and hybrid. When it comes to service model, so using service model, we can understand where we would be responsible and where our service provider would be responsible.
Okay.
Correct?
Yeah. Yeah. So only public cloud is the confusion part. In which scenario we use public cloud in our organization? Do we have like AWS and this Azure? They are the private cloud, right? Or they also provide public cloud services?
Azure, public, Azure, AWS, Google, all are public providers, public cloud providers.
Okay.
Correct?
Mm-hmm.
So now, why you will use public cloud? Just because, first of all, you will get global access to all the regions where you can set up your application based on your client requirement. Correct? To meet with the regulatory and compliance, first option. Second option, you will get flexibility, where you will get up-to-date hardware based on the latest processor architecture, correct? Which might be you, if you are talking about your private cloud, so you have to purchase, you have to invest first. So when it comes to public and private, the difference between public and private, the main difference is pricing, investment. In private cloud, we have to always invest. If you will get any project where you should use some up-to-date hardware, so it means you have to purchase hardware first, correct? You need to purchase, you need to invest into your infrastructure first. After that, you will focus on your business continuity. When it comes to cloud, public cloud, so where you will get a up-to-date hardware, a latest hardware which will be provided by your service provider to you, which you have to only rent. Correct? So it means
Like
there is
what
no
we are
investment.
using right now, like what we are seeing right now. This is
Correct,
public.
correct, correct.
Okay,
This is
okay,
public.
okay. Okay, clear. Okay, thank you.
Welcome. So as you can see now, my virtual link is established and there are two records which are added automatically just because of auto registration is enabled. If you will check here, so you will get FQDN private-vm cognitia.com and there is a corresponding IP address for this, which we can check. Let me copy this FQDN. Let me go to my public virtual machine and let me open a command prompt. And how we will test? Either I can use ping command. So I am on my public virtual machine and I'm going to ping my private virtual machine FQDN private-vm.cognitia.com. Let me ping. As you can see, I'm getting reply from 192.168.1.4. It means internal DNS is working. Correct? Or I can use NS lookup as well. So NS lookup, then your record. Enter. As you can see, you will get your corresponding IP address, which you can see here. Hope this part is also clear to everyone. Now we are done. Practically, we are done with this module. If you have any query, you can ask your question. Let me show you theoretical part as well. So before going to a review theory, if you have any query, you can ask a question. Hope this module is clear to everyone. And in respect to certification, this would be the core part. Correct? So virtual network, planning for virtual network, where you can see it's a logical representation of your own network. That means your private network into cloud. Create a dedicated private cloud virtual network, VPC. Security, why that is required? If I'm going to, in future, if I'm going to create a hybrid connectivity, we need a VNet into cloud, which we can connect to our on-premise data center. So securely, you can extend your data center with your virtual network. You can enable hybrid cloud scenario using VPN or express route. Creating virtual network, we are already done with this practically, how we will create virtual network, how we will create subnets. So what is subnet? Subnets are, it's a virtual network can be segmented into one or more subnets. So subnets provide logical division of your network so that you can isolate your network. Subnet can help improve security, where I can place my resources into public, private, so that I can implement security and I can expose my resources either to internet or to intranet. So increase performance and make it easier to manage your network. Each subnet must have a unique address range. So whatever address range we are going to configure, it should be unique, should not overlap. Planning IP addresses. When it comes to planning IP address, we can assign private or public IP address. So public IP address we can assign for internet connectivity or for internet service, public facing services like load balancers, public load balancers, correct, or firewalls. When it comes to private IP address we can use within the VNet, on-premise, LANs, VPN gateways, and express route. Private IP address used within a Azure Virtual Network internally, or you can say within the intranet, your on-premise network, or when you use VPN gateway or express route circuit to extend your network to Azure. That means for hybrid connectivity, you need a private network as well. Public IP address used for communication with the internet, including Azure public facing services, traffic manager, load balancer, application gateway, firewall. We need a public IP address. Creating public IP address, I already shown you. When you will create a public IP address, you will get two SKUs. You can create your public IP address either into IPv4 or into IPv6, where you will get basic and standard. So when it comes to basic and standard, so in basic you will get both types of assignment, dynamic and static, and zone redundancy you will not get into basic. That means SLA you will not get into basic IP address. So standard IP address, which is secure and in which you will get global and regional both tiers. So here we have difference. Public IP address, which we can assign to virtual machine dynamically and statically, load balancer as a front end, VPN gateway as a gateway IP address, application gateway as a front end. Dynamically and statically we can assign our IP address, public IP address to resources. When it comes to private IP address we can associate to a virtual machine dynamically and statically. Internal load balancer, it means load balancer which will work with application gateway, internal application gateway as a front end, which will work within the VNet as dynamically and statically. By default assignment is dynamic for private IP address. Optionally you can choose static. And how you will configure static IP address, I already shown you in my lab, and I hope you all remember. Demonstration. So creating virtual network security group, configuring Azure DNS, we are already done with this. Next lecture, network security group. So what is NSG? NSG is your firewall, layer for firewall. So limit your network traffic to a resource in virtual network. So limit the network security rules to allow or deny your inbound and outbound network traffic associated to a subnet or to a network interface. There are two scopes and can be associated multiple times. determining NSG rules. So when it comes to rules, I already explained you inbound, default and outbound default rules. So security rules in NSG enable you to filter your traffic, which can flow in or out virtual network subnets and network interfaces. There are default security rules which you cannot delete, these default rules, but you can override these rules by creating a high priority rules. When it comes to association of your NSG, we can associate NSG at multiple levels, NIC level and subnet level. What if we have two scopes? That means we have an NSG on subnet level, we have an NSG on NIC level, and we are confused which rule will take precedence. So you will get network security group effective rules tab on your under your network settings, where you will get rules which will be in effect. So where you will get, let me show you. You need to go to your virtual machine, open your VM, any VM, go to network settings. Here you can see you will get effective rules tab, which you can see the 8 rules which are in effect. So if we have multiple level of firewall, that means subnet level and NIC level, you need to check this. You would be able to see effective rules. That means rules which will be applied on your resources, which are going to be applied. Those rules are known as effective rules. So totally up to you. So generally we are not using multiple scopes just because we are using dedicated firewall. So where you can use Azure firewall or third-party firewalls like SonicWall, Barracuda, Checkpoint, Cisco ASA firewall. Rather than using Azure firewall, we can use third-party firewall as well into Azure VNets to filter our traffic. Creating NSG rules. So you will configure source, destination, service and priority, which we already configured. Application security group, what it is. So when it comes to common rules, common rule means assume we have a tier. Let me draw here. This would be my VNet in which we have a tier front end, that means web tier. Then we have app tier, backend. We have database tier. Correct? So in app web tier, we have 3 identical instances and which will be exposed to internet. That means to port 80 or port 443 if I'm going to use SSL certificate. Then my front end will receive request on port 80 and port 443, which should be sent to app tier on port number 443 or port 80. So application tier will receive this request and which will be forwarded to database tier on port number 1433. So in app tier also I have more than one identical resource. In database we have master and standby database, and we have synchronization enabled, replication enabled in between databases. What I want, just because when it comes to multiple instances which will be identical, you will get different NSGs. So if you are going to open any port, you have to open port on all virtual machines one by one manually. Security group in which we will associate our NSG, and this application security group we will associate to our virtual machines. It will automatically pick a common rule that is called application security group. So where you can implement common rules, which you can see here. So source internet, destination web server, port 80 and 443, which will be applied to your web servers. When it comes to app server, so app server same ports will be applied. When it comes to SQL database, 1433 will be applied to your SQL database. So extend your application structure. ASG logically group virtual machines, web server, application server into a group, and common rule will be applied to all virtual machines. Define rules to control the traffic flow. Wrap the ASG with NSG for added security. It means you will get first ASG and then you will add, that means integrate your NSG with your ASG, and this ASG you will apply attached to your all virtual machine NIC cards. And all VMs will get in the same tier, in the same group, all virtual machines will get common rules. So you don't have to configure rule individually for all virtual machine when it comes to large environment. So you will get flexibility here. Creating network security group, configuring inbound rule, configuring outbound rule. So let me show you outbound rule configuration. So let me go inside my private virtual machine, where you can see I'm inside my private virtual machine. Let me open browser and let me show you first of all outbound internet access is allowed inside this virtual machine by default. So let me configure this browser first. Let me open google.com. As you can see, I'm able to access google.com. Let me open YouTube or Facebook. As you can see, Facebook is also accessible. So it means I can access any website inside this virtual machine just because of my outbound rule. Correct. So I can access any port, any protocol over the internet. I can send outbound traffic. I'm allowed. What if I have to block in respect to security? I have to block internet access inside my virtual machine. So I will go to this virtual machine firewall. It means I will go to my private VM and outbound rule section of private virtual machine. I will add a rule here. Source any, port range any, destination, service tag to disable internet. You will select service tag where you can see service tag will be by default internet. You will get multiple service tag which have a public IP address into Azure. So select here internet, then service will be custom, port range star, it means all. Then protocol any action by default that is allowed. Click on deny. Priority I'm going with default priority number just because this number is lower than this number 65,001. Name, go with default name, click on add. Once this rule will be added here, you compare this rule with your third rule. So as you can see, port any, protocol any, source any, destination internet, action deny, action allow. So we have two identical rules. Which rule will take precedence? First or third?
The lower priority one.
So the first rule, correct?
Yeah,
Lower
first rule.
priority. Lower the number, higher the priority. Sorry, high priority rule. Lower the number, higher the priority. Which you can see 110 priority number. This will be applied on my resource. Let me show you. So let me go to my virtual machine. Let me close this browser first so that I can ensure that there would be no caching into my browser. Let me open my browser once again and let's check google.com, Facebook, Flipkart. As you can see, internet is now disabled inside my virtual machine. I'm not able to send any outbound traffic to internet. That's how you can configure outbound rules as well inside your virtual machine using your NSC firewall outbound rules. Hope that is also clear to everyone. If you have any query, you can ask a question.
We spoke about the ports 880,443. Any way we can, any way we can assign 443 to two web applications created into IIS?
Into IIS, we can assign 443, but assigning 443 means you should have certificates, correct?
Yeah, but I have two web applications, say.
Oh, so you need to purchase two certificates.
Okay. Different two different certificates.
Two different
not
certificates.
With the same FQDN.
Same certificate we cannot use.
Yeah, because what happens is sometimes the port is, if I change the port, say I give it as a different port other than 443, it gets displayed when I access it into the web browser.
Correct. We can assign custom port like proxy 8080, correct?
Yeah.
50,001. And it will be exposed into browser just because when user is going to access my website using that custom post, he should use colon and port number.
Right. And correct. I don't want that to be seen actually. I'm just wondering how that can.
So in that case, you have to purchase separate certificates.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah, CA issue or DigiCert, something like that. All right. Yeah.
Okay, let's move to next lecture, configuring DNS, last lesson for this module. So we can identify our domain names and custom domain names where we can add our purchase domain name, DNS name to our tenant as well. Correct? So let me show you tenant level, how you will add. So if I will search Entra ID, so as you can see, by default, I'm getting one name here, which is Sanjay Singh mcplive.onmicrosoft.com, in which my email ID included and DNS suffix given by Microsoft on microsoft.com. What I want, just because I already purchased sanjaycloud.com and sanjaycloud.com is my organization, assume. So what I want, whenever I will add my users into my directory, they all should get a custom DNS, a DNS which is basically purchased for my organization, sanjaycloud.com. How we will do that? Right now, if I'm going to add any user here, you can see I have only one DNS option. What I want, they should use my organization DNS like scl.com. Whatever user you will add here, they should get scl.com suffix. So user at the username at the rate scl.com, username at the rate wipro.com, username at the rate tsys.com. Correct? How we can do that? So left hand side on your directory, you will get custom DNS tab, which you can see here, custom domain names, where you have to add your custom domain. Click on add custom domain. Then you need to type your domain name which you purchased, like sanjaycloud.com, which I purchased. Let me click on add domain. This domain is added here, but adding this domain doesn't mean that we can use this domain, just because we have to verify. Otherwise, anyone can add scl.com or wipro.com. So we have to verify. Where we will verify? We'll go to our domain providers console. That means GoDaddy. We'll go to GoDaddy where we purchase our DNS. Then we'll go to DNS tab of GoDaddy. Let me go to sanjaycloud.com. Here you will get your DNS records. So you have to add a new record here. Now what would be a record configuration? Go to your directory tenant where you can see either you will create text record or you will create MX record. MX record you will create for Office 365 tenant. Correct? So in Azure Active Directory or Microsoft Entra ID, we will create text record. So record alias or host name. Copy this at the rate and here click on first of all add record, select text record, name will be at the rate value, go back to Azure, copy this value from Azure, then paste here, TTL will be custom 3600, which you can check from here, 3600, click on add, save this record will be added into your DNS. And once this record will be added into your DNS, go back to your domain, click on verify. So generally it can take up to 72 hours to verify your DNS. So it depends on your domain provider, that means service provider, GoDaddy or Big Rock, who is going to verify. But it will be verified in few minutes, but it can take up to 72 hours maximum. So let me click on verify. As you can see, it will be verified. As you can see, that is verified. Once verification will be done, go back to your custom domains. Let me refresh here. As you can see, that is verified. Let me open it and let me make it primary. So now I'm going to make this domain primary. Let me make it primary. Unable to Sanjay Cloud default directory. Let me check where it is. Let me refresh. Yeah, that is already primary. So now if I will go to users tab and if I'll create any user, it will be created using sanjaycloud.com, which you can see here. So like I'm going to create a user, Azure user 90. So Azure user 90 at the rate sanjaycloud.com. Let me click on review and create. So display name. Review and create, and this user will be created into my tenant directory with my DNS name, my organization DNS name, which you would be able to see here. Azure 90 at sanjaycloud.com, and this would be live. This user can log into my Azure portal using this name. So that's how we are adding users using our organization DNS name by configuring custom DNS. Hope that is also clear to everyone. No one will show you this just because Practically, no one will show you just because we have to purchase a DNS for this, which I purchased here so that I can show you all production related lab. Correct. I hope this part is clear to everyone, where we can add our custom DNS and we would be able to create our users using our organization DNS name. We can create DNS zones for public domain, which we already created. And we created records as well, where you can delegate your domain using their name servers, which are provided by Azure. And then you can add your record sets into Azure only. For public DNS. Private DNS, which I already shown you, we can use our internal DNS order as well. So use your own custom domain name, provide name resolution for VMs within the VNet, between VNets, automatic hostname record management, remove the need of custom DNS solution, use all common DNS type of record types, available into all regions. So if you have two virtual machines within the VNet, VM1, VM2, so you would be able to access your virtual machine using their name. So first request will be sent to your Azure DNS. It will check its record set. So if IP address is available, if record is available, then this will respond with IP address, private IP address of requested name. That's how you will query your resources. We are done with this also. We are done with lab. We are done with this module. If you have any query related to module number 4, you can ask your question. Hope this module is clear to everyone.
Yes, Sanjay, just okay, we still have presentation. Okay, we will, then I will ask in the end.
No, we are done with presentation also.
We're done. Okay, because I am trying to create the public DNS zone, and if you don't mind, I can share my screen just for 1 minute.
Please, please.
Okay, so actually just because I wanted to do everything practically from the scratch, and this is my personal environment, so I have in fact I have to go through 2 more videos of previous session to understand how do I organize everything. But from today's session, I just created one public zone, DNS zone for tripsandfly.info EU. Now here, what I need to do at GoDaddy end. This is my tripsandfly.info.
Scroll up. There's a name servers. There's a name servers tab.
Okay, here. Okay.
So scroll down. Click on change name server.
Okay, name server.
And I hope this would be your private DNS, correct? That means that is not
Yes,
related
yes.
to your.
No,
So click
no,
on I'll use my own name server.
Okay.
Select this option. Add two
And
more.
then,
Add 2 more columns. If you'll see here. Yeah, add name
okay,
servers.
is it every time required?
Yes, that's because Microsoft will give you 4 name servers. Now go back to your browser. Tab. Yes. Here you can see your 4 name servers. Copy your name servers one by one and paste all 4 name servers here. Remove dot, end of the name server here. Now second name server. So you have to remove dot after every name server.
Yeah. And this has nothing to do with the domains like tripsandfly.org, tripsandfly.net.
Yes.
Nothing to do with it, right?
No, no.
Okay.
Click on save.
Right. No. This is my
Continue.
website
Click on
display.
continue.
Continue.
Now go back to Azure and you are done with this. Now you don't have to manage your GoDaddy portal. You have to add your records here on Azure.
Now I create a record. And I put the server name for a record, which will be used as a host server for this website, right?
Correct.
Okay, so when you have some time, if you can send me, because I'm really struggling, I have around 4 virtual machines in on-prem environment, and today I will create one more machine in Azure, and I need to domain join with on-prem. This is the solution I'm trying to find for quite a long time.
Okay.
And some people said I need to buy a public IP. Some said I need to buy some third-party provider. So
I hope you are using your home network, correct? You are.
This is my personal environment. Yeah, this is my
okay.
personal. Yeah.
What I'm
And if
saying,
it's
you are using a Wi-Fi, home Wi-Fi. So using your home Wi-Fi, no need to purchase any public IP address. You can directly connect your laptop or your system, which have your all virtual machines, to Azure VNet using point-to-site connection.
okay, and if you can share any article for point to site, because I will now go ahead and create a virtual
As I
machine.
already told you that I have a recorded video which I can share with you. So
Yes, okay.
I'll share
Okay.
tomorrow, correct?
No problem. So after that I can do. Okay, and does this mean that after creating that, I will have to keep this VPN always connected?
Yeah, definitely.
Otherwise it
So
will
it will
unjoin for
create
the
a
domain.
user VPN connection into your laptop. So
Mhm.
which you can decide whether you want, whenever you want to connect your infrastructure, you need to connect. Otherwise, if you want always up, then you need to always connect.
So does in our environment, like in my company which I work for, do they also do the same thing, or do they have any
So
permanent setup?
in company environment, they will set up site-to-site VPN.
Site to
Correct.
site VPN.
So there's a difference. Like in my laptop, in your laptop, it means that is called user device. Correct.
Right.
So if we are connecting a user device to Azure VNet, so we will use point-to-site connection. Correct. When it comes to B2B, business to business, where we are going to connect our data center to Azure VNet, so we will set up a site-to-site VPN.
And is that a paid service from Microsoft, or is that a free service?
It's a paid service. So VPN gateway is a paid service.
Okay, I get it. Thank you. That's all.
Anyone else who have any query related to module number 4? I'm going to delete my resource group, which I created for this module. Next module is for intra-site connectivity, where we are going to understand how we will connect multiple VNets and how we will connect our on-premise site to Azure. That means hybrid connectivity using VPN. That we will
This
discuss.
is our next module?
Yes.
Oh, perfect. Then I think my site will be solved. Okay.
That's why I'm saying tomorrow I will share that video.
Okay, perfect.
But that
then.
is not in our, this part is not in our syllabus. Correct?
Okay.
Just because creating site-to-site connectivity, we need an on-premise infrastructure, which we don't have. Correct? So I can only show you Azure part. And when it comes to hybrid connectivity or point-to-site connectivity, so 95% configuration you have to do on Azure. Rest 5% you need to do on your either on your on-premise or on your local system. Correct?
Okay.
So for that, I have a recorded video, a reference video, which will help you how you will do it.